It's Mike. I've got something really special for you today. If you're a fan of pro wrestling history or of pro wrestling psychology, or another way of saying that is the underlying concepts of why and of how we perform in the ring, you're going to love this one. Until this very moment, what you're about to see has only been available to my patrons over on Patreon. Without their support, this channel would simply go away. And as my hiatus from YouTube continues a little while longer, I wanted to give you a glimpse into the kind of content I create each and every week over on Patreon. So even though there isn't a new Till We Make It here on the YouTube channel, well, every single Monday, my patrons get a brand new video no matter what, like this one. And today's video was inspired by a comment I got from one of you. So thank you, Bruno. This one's going out to you. Today, I want to talk about how gimmick matches have different priorities from all other matches. And I think we're going to center a lot of today's discussion on one particular type of gimmick match, because that's going to make our life easy. We're going to talk a whole lot about steel cage matches. But I want you to know the concepts we're going to talk about herein have much broader applications than just steel cage matches. These can be applied to all types of gimmick matches, and I'm sure we'll cover that ground before we wrap it up today. But I just wanted to give you that right here at the top. Even though we're going to talk a lot about cages, we're really talking about all types of gimmick matches. And maybe to lay a little bit of groundwork here, where do gimmick matches even come from? And I guess we can talk about the behind the scenes of it. We can also talk a little bit about the history of it. So let's talk about the history of steel cage matches for just a second. This dates all the way back to the first of the four eras of professional wrestling. It goes all the way back to the Carnival era, the first steel cage match that can be verified by multiple sources. It takes place in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 1937. There are what we would call unverified sources of cage matches happening in the southeastern United States earlier than that. The 1937 in Atlanta, Georgia is the only one that has multiple accounts that verify it took place. And back then, a steel cage match doesn't look anything like what we think of when we picture a steel cage in our heads. It means that the ring was surrounded by 3 to 6 feet of chicken wire. The same exact thing that you'd expect to see on a farm. And this is for a variety of reasons, but the easiest is when a promotion is packing up to leave town in the Carnival era and move on to the next town, that chicken wire can just be rolled up into a giant coil, shoved down into a barrel, put on the truck, and off they go. It's easy to transport. Now, if you hear steel cage and you immediately think of fence walls, like what Hell in a Cell is made out of, fencing, that doesn't really come along until the 1950s. And if, like me, when you hear steel cage, your mind goes to the big blue bars of the classic WWF Golden Era steel cage that I think you first see at WrestleMania 2 when Hogan's against King Kong Bundy, that comes along in the 1980s. But the original version that dates all the way back to the Carnival era of pro wrestling is just having the ring surrounded by chicken wire. It's to keep other wrestlers out from interfering and isolate the combatants in the ring. So that's a little bit of the history of the steel cage. Let's go behind the scenes. What's the point of this thing? The point is to sell tickets. It's to draw money. It's a novelty that can be advertised on the card. It sets it apart from all of the standard fare that you might see on a wrestling card, and it's meant to heighten interest. This novelty, this rare feature, it is meant to sell tickets. Here's the thing about all gimmick matches. They are all novelties. They are all designed to do exactly this. It's a rare feature. It is a novelty on the card meant to heighten interest and draw money. It's meant to sell tickets. And if you are tasked with wrestling in a gimmick match, then the logic, the psychology of how you assemble the match is going to be completely dictated to you by the circumstances and conditions under which this type of match can be won. And that gets as granular as the moves that you're going to choose, the spots that you're going to assemble. Yeah, the spots you put into a match will be dictated to you by the gimmick of the match, by the condition under which the match can be won. And I don't want to gloss over this, so let's get real specific here. I I want to give you at least one example of how the spots you choose can be dictated to you by the conditions under which the match can be won, by the gimmick of the match. So let's stay with steel cage match for a moment, okay? So let's say for the purpose of a steel cage match, the only way that you can win the match is by climbing up and over the top of the cage and dropping all the way down to the floor. That's the only way that you can win. So that means at the very first opportunity that either wrestler could begin climbing the cage to escape, they have to. Why? It's the only way to win. And if we're not trying to win, why is the audience going to care? So you cannot discard the logic or the underlying psychology that the conditions of that type of steel cage match introduce, which are, you can only win by climbing up and over and hitting the floor. So you have to. And that might mean the moment the opening bell sounds, that the heel turns around, runs to the walls, and starts climbing up, only to be yanked down by the babyface, and then they start to fight. They wrestle a bit, they brawl, but once somebody is put down with something, it takes some big bump, and they go down hard, and there is another opportunity, the climbing has to begin. And that might mean this time the babyface is climbing out, and the heel peels them off of the wall, and they go back to wrestling until another opportunity presents itself. But everything is going to be dictated by the condition under which the match can be won. And that is by climbing up and out of the cage and hitting the floor. So everything has to be in service to that. Otherwise, it will seem to the audience like no one is trying to win. And that's going to cost you audience investment. If you want to check out the rest of that video or one of the other 225 exclusive videos that only my patrons have access to, follow the link which is down below in the descriptus. Or in just a moment, an orange box will appear on screen. Either of these links will take you directly to my Patreon. Come and join our community. Be part of the roll call of all my amazing patrons. And I will see you over there.